Well, there's a whole variety of different reasons which make military intervention much harder to even contemplate. It's a very messy sectarian situation, both internally and in terms of the immediate neighbours. You've got no unanimity so far as the Arab League is concerned, which was the case with Libya in favour of rapid and effective military action. You've got a very strong Syrian military, which would make any military intervention a very bloody affair. And of course you've also got the problem of the veto in the Security Council being applied by Russia because of its very obvious realpolitik interests in Syria, which is not very attractive, but it's a reality we have to deal with. I think for all those reasons, not just the Russian one, it would not have been particularly wise, quite apart from being possible, to go into Syria militarily. There's always a rule of thumb that you should apply before even contemplating military intervention, and that is that you've got to be absolutely confident it's going to cause more good than harm. And if there's a chance that you'll suffer many more casualties, many more horrors and miseries of war being experienced, then you should think long and carefully about applying the military option. That doesn't mean that you don't do anything. It doesn't mean you sit on your hands. This is not the age when we talk about humanitarian intervention, which is basically send in the Marines or do nothing. This is the age when we talk about the responsibility to protect, which is a much more nuanced and multi-dimensional concept, which has been around now for the best part of a decade. And what that means is that when a government either commits mass atrocity crimes or allows them to happen within its territory, it is the responsibility of the wider international community to take appropriate action, whatever is possible. And that certainly should have meant, in the case of Syria, much earlier and stronger condemnation of the Assad regime. It should have meant sanctions, it should have meant an arms embargo, it should have meant the threat at least of prosecution before the International Criminal Court. So one of the things that's obviously gone wrong in Syria was not so much a failure to intervene militarily, but a failure to react firmly and effectively. And that's an issue with which we've really got to wrestle if we want this new principle to mean something in the hard cases in the future. I see Australia's bid for the UN Security Council as a matter both of national interest and of national pride. National interest, yes, because Security Council decisions do affect us. They affect us in terms of commitments in Afghanistan and East Timor. They affect us in terms of sanctions regimes, which can cost us economically observing. We ought to be part of that decision-making process from time to time because of the interests that are very directly involved. But we also ought to be part of that decision-making process simply because we're a serious country. A serious, proud country that has something to contribute, that is a significant player in the region and in the world. And for us to go something like 27 years, as it will be by next year, without being on the world's supreme executive decision-making body when it comes to security issues is really just an abdication of responsibility. And I think it's absolutely indefensible for the opposition to be making this a kind of a partisan issue. This should be a national issue with strong bipartisan support, because it's exactly the sort of thing a country like us ought to be doing. I'm very confident that the Responsibility to Protect will take hold and be not only bedded down, as it more or less is now in principle, but be actually very effective in practice, including not just in the soft cases of long-term prevention and cooperation and so on, but in the really hard cases where violence is exploding and you do have to take fairly tough measures to respond to it. I think the high water mark so far was the decisions of the Security Council in Libya and Côte d'Ivoire about the same time last year, which were textbook examples of the application of the principle as it was originally conceived. You work through stages of early prevention, you work through stages of non-coercive forms of pressure like sanctions and reference to the International Criminal Court and so on. And only then, when all those measures fail and you're facing real imminent catastrophe, do you contemplate the exercise of military power. All of that happened according to the textbook last year, and I think it can happen again, provided we can get past the obstacle posed by the political debate that has erupted about how that Libyan mandate was implemented by the NATO-led coalition last year. They've got this idea, not that we abandon responsibility to protect, but that we supplement it by what they call the principle of responsibility while protecting, which is a very innovative idea that, at least when it comes to this really hard stuff of military response, the idea is that the Security Council has got to perform better than it did last year. A, by having a serious debate about the proper criteria for military intervention before it authorises the mandate in the first place. And secondly, by having some kind of effective review and monitoring mechanism to ensure that other members of the Security Council get to have another go at discussing, debating the mandate during the course of its implementation, rather than just giving an open sesame to the implementers to interpret it however they want. But congenital optimist that I am, I believe that this is a doctrine that's evolving. I think it will be possible to get some consensus, maybe too late to help in Syria. But because nobody really wants to go back to the bad old days of total inaction, catastrophic inaction of the kind that we can all remember from the 1990s in Rwanda and Srebrenica and so on. Nor does anyone really, I think, want to go back to the days of Kosovo in the 1990s when there was military action, but without Security Council approval, in defiance of the UN Charter, in defiance of the principles of a rule-based international order. Nobody wants to go back to that, really, and I think as a result the pressure will be to find some sort of compromise, new cooperative understanding, and the responsibility to protect will live.